Hello there, welcome to HFY Sci-Fi Galaxy, where humans face the unknown, outsmart the impossible, and turn every test into victory. So sit back and let the story begin.
Nobody remembered who first called him Half Portion, but the name stuck to Danny Harlow like mud on cheap boots. He stood at the tail end of the formation, chest heaving, legs shaking, while the rest of the squad had already finished the endurance drill and started stretching. Outpost Girl. Seven sat on a gray, windswept rock at the edge of Concord space, and the training ground was nothing more than a flat stretch of crushed gravel surrounded by signal towers. Danny crossed the finish line a full 4 minutes behind the next slowest runner. Preet, the biggest soldier in the squad, did not even try to hide his laughter. Briggs, seriously, how is he still here? My little sister runs faster than that, and she is 9 years old. A few others laughed. Danny bent over, hands on his knees, breathing hard. He said nothing. Sergeant Laura Briggs watched from the side with her arms crossed. She did not laugh, but she did not defend him either. She just marked something on her data pad and told everyone to hit the showers. Danny ate alone that night. He always ate alone. The mess hall on Garrel 7 was small, just a metal room with long benches and food that tasted like salted cardboard. He sat in the corner and chewed slowly. Rin, the Kavari field medic assigned to their unit, perched on a bench nearby. She was avian in build, with sleek gray-blue feathers covering her arms and a sharp face that always looked like she was studying something. She watched Danny without pretending not to. Later, in her personal log, she recorded a note. The human called Harlow is a puzzle. Among the Kavari, an individual who consistently fails at their role would simply choose a different role. No shame in it. But this one keeps returning to the same failure every morning. I do not understand if this is courage or stupidity. Humans seem unable to tell the difference themselves. After dinner, Sergeant Briggs found Danny cleaning his weapon in the barracks. She sat down across from him and said nothing for a long moment. Harlow, I'm going to be honest with you. Yes, Sergeant, you are the weakest soldier I have ever commanded, and I have commanded a lot of soldiers. Danny kept cleaning the barrel of his rifle. His hands were steady, but Briggs continued, I have never once had to wonder whether you would show up. Every morning, you are the first one dressed and the last one to quit. I do not know if that is enough to keep you here, but I have not sent the transfer papers yet. Danny looked up. Thank you, Sergeant. Do not thank me. Just try not to die in a way that creates paperwork for me. She left. Danny finished cleaning his weapon, stowed it properly, and went to bed. He was almost asleep when the explosion HIT was not exactly an explosion. It was more like a deep, shuddering crack that rattled the walls and knocked a ceiling panel loose above Danny's bunk. Alarm screamed. Red light flooded the barracks. The squad scrambled. Outside, a transport ship had come down hard about 200 meters from the outpost perimeter. It had not landed. It had crashed. The hull was torn open and pieces of cargo were scattered across the gravel like broken teeth. Briggs had the squad in formation within 3 minutes. By then, the outpost commander had already locked down the gates. Something about the crash was wrong. The transport was not scheduled. It had no flight plan on record, and the cargo it carried was sealed in biocontainment units, the kind with triple-locked magnetic seals and hazard markings that most soldiers never saw in their entire careers. One of those units was cracked open. Empty. Within hours, a Dravine intelligence officer named Nalith arrived on an emergency shuttle. The Dravine were tall, insectoid, with segmented limbs and multifaceted eyes that reflected light like black glass. Nalith moved with the careful precision of someone who was used to being the smartest person in any room. That he gathered the command staff and the senior squad leaders in the briefing room. Danny was not invited, but the walls on Garrel 7 were thin. The transport was carrying samples recovered from the dead world of Sethra, Nalith said. His voice was dry and clicking. The organism is designated as the Hollow. It is a parasitic life form that bonds with living hosts. In most cases, the host dies within 1 to 3 hours as the organism consumes their nervous system. Someone asked the obvious question, and when they do not die, Nalith paused. Then they become something else. Something significantly more dangerous. The survival rate among bonded hosts is less than 4%. Every survivor has exhibited extreme aggression, enhanced sensory function, and total loss of higher reasoning. They become weapons. The room was quiet. The cracked unit contained a single live specimen. It is somewhere within a 3-kilometer radius of this outpost. I need a search party, armed, cautious, and prepared to kill the organism on sight before it finds a host. Briggs organized the search teams. She picked her best soldiers first, then filled in the gaps. Danny was not picked. He stood at the back of the group, watching. When Briggs finished assigning roles, Danny stepped forward. "Sergeant, I volunteer for the perimeter team." Preet snorted. A few others exchanged looks. Briggs studied Danny for a moment. Then she nodded. "Fine. Rear guard. Stay behind the formation and try to keep up." Nobody objected. Nobody cared. Danny checked his weapon, pulled on his gear, and followed the squad into the dark. The wind on Garrel 7 howled at night like something alive and hungry, and Danny Harlow walked straight into it, dead last as always. The rocks on Garrel 7 were the color of old bone, and at night they all looked the same. The search party moved in a tight column through the jagged terrain surrounding the outpost. 12 soldiers, thermal scanners up, weapons hot. The wind had dropped to a low moan that made it hard to hear anything beyond 10 meters. Danny walked at the back of the formation, exactly where Briggs had placed him. The thermal scanners showed nothing. Whatever had escaped from that biocontainment unit was either cold-blooded, underground, or already dead. Preet said it was probably dead, something that Small could not survive long on a rock like Garrel 7. The squad relaxed slightly. Danny did not. He was looking at the ground. Not with a scanner, but with his eyes. Years of being the slowest, the last, the one always trailing behind had given Danny one useless skill. He noticed things on the ground. Scuff marks, dropped gear, uneven gravel. When you spent every march staring at the boots ahead of you, you learned the terrain by instinct that he saw it first. A faint smear on the surface of a flat rock, barely visible. It caught the edge of his helmet light for just a second. A thin, wet line of pale, blue luminescence, like something had dragged itself across the stone. "I see something." Danny said over the comm. Preet glanced back. "You see your own shadow, half portion. Keep moving." Danny stopped walking. He crouched and touched the smear with his gloved finger. It was slightly warm. It led away from the column's path, toward a cluster of low rocks with a dark gap between them. He keyed his comm again. "Sergeant, there is bioluminescent residue on the rocks. Trail leads northeast toward a small cave formation." Briggs paused the column. She walked back and looked at what Danny had found. She was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Good eyes, Harlow. Preet, take point. We follow the trail." But Preet was already moving forward on the main path, waving dismissively. "It is probably mineral runoff. This rock is full of phosphorescent deposits. Come on, we are wasting time." The squad followed Preet. Briggs hesitated, then moved with the group. She gave Danny a look that said stay close. Danny did not stay close. He followed the trail. IT led him 50 meters off the main path, through a narrow gap between 2 boulders, and into a shallow cave barely tall enough to crouch in. His helmet light cut through the darkness and landed on something small, translucent, and alive. The hollow was nothing like what Naleth had described. There was no monster. Nobody tingo horror. It was about the size of Danny's fist, shaped like a flattened teardrop, and it glowed with a faint, pulsing blue-white light. It was pressed into a crack in the cave wall, trembling. Danny stared at it. It looked like a scared animal trying to hide, that he reached for his comm to call the squad. His fingers touched the button. The organism moved that IT did not lunge. It did not attack. It simply released its grip on the rock and fell toward Danny like a drop of water falling from a ceiling. It hit his chest and passed through his jacket, through his skin, through his ribs like it was made of warm smoke. Danny felt a burning sensation spread across his torso, then a sharp spike of pain behind his eyes, and then nothing to hit the ground. The squad found him 9 minutes later, face down in the cave, unresponsive. Ren was the first to reach him. She rolled him over and pressed her scanner to his chest. His heart rate was dangerously low. His temperature was spiking. His neural activity was going haywire, random bursts of electrical signals firing across his brain like a lightning storm. He is bonded, Rin said quietly. They carried him back to the outpost at a run. In the medical bay, Rin stabilized his vitals while Nalith performed deep scans. The Dravine's multifaceted eyes flickered rapidly as he processed the data. Full integration, Nalith said. The organism has bonded with his central nervous system. In every recorded case, the host either dies within the first hour or begins exhibiting violent transformation by the second hour. He checked his instruments again. Harlow is doing neither. His body is not rejecting the organism, but it is not surrendering to it either. He is simply enduring it. Nalith turned to Briggs. His voice was flat. My recommendation is immediate termination. If this host turns, he will be faster and more dangerous than anything your squad can handle. Briggs looked at Danny lying on the medical bed. His face was pale and covered in sweat. His breathing was shallow but steady. He looked exactly like what he had always been. Small, weak, and stubbornly alive. No, Briggs said. Sergeant, you do not understand the risk. I understand it fine. We wait. Nalith stared at her with his black glass eyes. Then he stepped back and said nothing more. Danny lay unconscious for 3 days. Rin monitored him around the clock. His vitals stabilized slowly, like a body learning a new rhythm. The neural storms calmed. His temperature dropped back to normal on the third night. Rin was adjusting his foreline when Danny's eyes opened. For just a moment, his irises flickered amber, a deep, warm glow that had no business being in human eyes. Then the glow faded, and his eyes were brown again. Normal. Tired, he looked at Rin and blinked. What happened? He asked. Rin set down her instruments and sat on the edge of the bed. Her feathers were ruffled with exhaustion. Something chose you, Danny, she said. And for reasons I cannot explain, you survived. The first thing Danny noticed when he walked out of the medical bay was that the floor was breathing. Not literally, but he could feel it. Every footstep of every person in the outpost traveled through the metal panels and into his feet like tiny whispers. He could tell that Rin was walking behind him by the light, quick tapping of her clawed toes. He could tell that someone heavy, probably Preet, was moving through the corridor 2 sections over. He could feel the hum of the outpost generator 3 floors below, a deep, slow pulse like a sleeping heartbeat. Danny stopped in the middle of the hallway and pressed his palm flat against the wall. He felt vibrations from a conversation happening 2 rooms away. He could not hear the words, but he could feel the rhythm. 2 people talking. One was calm. The other was agitated. Danny. Rin was watching him carefully. What are you feeling? Everything, he said. Nalith ran tests for 2 days. Brain scans, nerve response checks, blood work, reflex measurements. The Dravine officer was methodical and showed no emotion, but Danny could feel something from him anyway. A subtle tension in his joints, a slight increase in the chemical signals coming off his skin. Nalith was fascinated and trying very hard not to show it. The result confused everyone. Danny was not stronger. His muscle density had not changed. His bone structure was the same. He could not run faster or lift more weight. By every physical measurement, he was still the weakest soldier on the base, but his nervous system had been completely rewired. The hollow had threaded itself through every nerve fiber in Danny's body like roots growing through soil. His sensory input had expanded beyond anything in the medical database. He could detect changes in air pressure, temperature shifts of less than half a degree, micro-vibrations in solid surfaces, and the electromagnetic signatures of nearby, living organisms that he could feel heartbeats. It is not enhancement, Nalith told Briggs during the debrief. It is integration. The organism has not made him more than human. It has made him more aware than any human has ever been. His brain is processing sensory data at a rate I have never recorded in any species. Is he dangerous? Briggs asked. I do not know yet. Danny returned to duty. Briggs allowed it over Nalith's objection. She said she would rather have Danny where she could see him than locked in a room where she could not. The squad did not know what to make of him. He looked the same. Small, quiet, always a step behind. But something was different, and they could feel it even if they could not name it. The sparring drill proved it. Preet was paired with Danny, which had always been the squad's favorite joke. Preet outweighed Danny by 40 kilos and had arms like construction beams. He threw a straight right at Danny's face, the same punch he had thrown 100 times before. Full speed. No holding back because nobody ever held back against half portion. Danny caught it, not with speed. His hand moved at a normal pace. But it was already in the exact right position before Preet's fist arrived, as if Danny had known the trajectory before the punch was thrown. His fingers closed around Preet's knuckles and held firm. Not with strength, with placement. He had found the angle where Preet's own force locked his wrist in place. The gym went silent. Preet stared at Danny's hand around his fist. Danny stared back. There was no anger in his eyes, no triumph. Just a calm, steady focus that nobody had ever seen on his face before. Danny let go. He stepped back, turned, and walked out of the gym. That evening, Rin found him sitting on the outpost's outer observation deck, staring at the gray sky. She sat beside him, her feathers flattening against the cold wind. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said. "Yes." "Does it speak to you?" "The organism." Danny was quiet for a moment. "No, it does not speak. It does not have words. It just feels." "What does it feel?" Danny closed his eyes. "Right now? Safe. For the first time in its life, it feels safe." He opened his eyes and looked at Ren. "I do not think it was a weapon, Ren. I think it was scared. I think it was alone for a very long time, and it was dying, and it reached for the nearest living thing it could find. And the nearest living thing happened to be me. Why do you think it survived in you when it killed every other host?" Danny almost smiled. "Because I did not fight it. Everyone else it bonded with was strong. Soldiers, predators, creatures with powerful immune systems that attacked the organism the moment it entered. And the Hollow had to overpower them to survive, and that process destroyed them both." He paused. "I did not have anything to fight with. I have never been strong enough to fight anything. So when it came in, I just let it settle." And it did. Rin recorded this conversation in her medical log that night. She added a note at the bottom. "I have studied xenobiology for 14 years across 6 species. I have never encountered a symbiotic bond this stable." The human's weakness was not a flaw in the bonding process. It was the key to it. The next morning, an emergency signal arrived from deep space. A Concord research team on the dead world of Sethura had gone silent. No communications for 72 hours. The Concord needed a squad to investigate. Nalith requested that Danny be included in the deployment. Not because he trusted Danny, but because the hollow organism inside him would react to its homeworld, and Nalith wanted to study that reaction. Briggs approved the mission. She looked at Danny when she gave the order. "You wanted to prove you belong here. Harlow, this is your chance. Try not to make me regret it." Danny nodded. He could feel her heartbeat. It was steady, but underneath the steadiness, there was something he had never sensed from her before. She was afraid for him. Sethura looked like a world that had forgotten how to be alive. The drop ship broke through a thin, gray atmosphere and descended over a landscape of ash-colored plains and massive skeletal structures rising from the ground like the rib cages of creatures so large they could have swallowed cities. There was no green, no water, no movement. Just bone-colored rock under a sky the color of an old bruise. Danny felt the hollow stir inside him the moment they entered the atmosphere. It was not fear. It was not excitement. It was grief. A deep, rolling sadness that came in waves. As if the organism inside his chest was crying without sound, he gripped the edge of his seat and breathed through it. Ren, sitting across from him, noticed immediately. "Danny, it remembers this place," he said quietly. "It remembers what it used to be." Flashes came to him. Not memories exactly, but impressions carried through the bond like heat through metal. A world covered in thick forests of bioluminescent trees. Rivers that glowed at night. Creatures of every size moving through the canopy, each one bonded to a hollow partner that lived inside them, sharing senses, sharing life. A whole ecosystem built on symbiosis, then darkness. Something killed the forests. The rivers dried. The creatures died one by one, and their hollow partners were left alone, starving, crawling through the ash of a world that had abandoned them. Danny opened his eyes. His cheeks were wet. Are you all right? Ren asked. They were not parasites, Danny said. They were partners. This entire world ran on partnership. And then something destroyed it and left them with nothing. The squad landed near the last known position of the Concord research team. It was a prefabricated base camp set into the shadow of one of the massive skeletal structures. The camp was intact. The equipment was still running. The lights were still on. But the people were dead. 6 researchers, 3 human, 2 Kavari, 1 Dravine. All dead. Their bodies were arranged neatly inside the main laboratory, almost like someone had positioned them carefully after killing them. There were no signs of a struggle from the victims, but there were burn marks on the walls and floor. Energy weapon discharge. Clean, precise, surgical. Nalith examined the wounds. His insectoid face was unreadable, but Danny could feel the chemical spike of recognition coming off him. Vreth weapons, Nalith said. Vreth Dominion military-grade sidearms. These people were executed. The Vreth Dominion was a militant species coalition that operated outside Concord law. Aggressive, expansionist, and known for exactly one thing. They took what they wanted, and they did not ask permission. Briggs scanned the research team's logs. The data told a clear story. The researchers had discovered that the hollow organisms were not extinct. There was a living colony beneath the planet's surface, possibly hundreds of organisms, the last surviving population of the species. The researchers had been mapping the colony's location when the Vreth found them. They were harvesting, Nalith said. The Vreth had been capturing hollow specimens and forcing them into captive hosts, creating bonded berserkers, weaponized soldiers with no will of their own. He looked at Danny. What you carry inside, you happen naturally and cooperatively. What the Vreth are doing is slavery. Danny felt the hollow pulse with something sharp and hot. Anger, not his own. Briggs ordered the squad to secure the perimeter. They had barely moved into position when the first energy bolt hit the ground 3 meters from Preet's feet. Vreth soldiers. 8 of them, dropping from a cloaked shuttle that materialized above the ridge like a shadow, gaining substance. They were tall, armored in dark composite plating, and they moved with the coordinated precision of species that had been fighting wars for longer than humans had been building cities. 2 soldiers from Danny's squad went down in the first 5 seconds. Clean shots, center mass. Preet took a bolt to the shoulder and dropped behind a rock, cursing. The squad returned fire, but the Vreth had better positions and better armor. Briggs shouted orders, trying to organize a fallback. Danny stepped out from behind cover. The hollow flooded his system. It was not rage. It was clarity. Every nerve in his body lit up with information. He could feel the vibrations of the Vreth soldiers' boots through the rocky ground. He knew where each one was standing. He could sense the heat build up in their weapons before they fired. He could read the tension in their muscles and predict which direction they would move. He walked into the firefight. A bolt came at him from the left. Danny was already leaning right. Not fast, just early. He reached the nearest Vreth soldier and grabbed the weapon barrel, redirecting it into the soldier's own squad mate. The bolt hit armor and staggered the second Vreth backward. Danny dropped low, swept the first soldier's legs, took the weapon, and threw it to Preet. He moved to the next one. An armored fist swung at his head. Danny ducked under it by 2 centimeters, not because he was quick, but because he knew exactly how far the fist would travel. He pushed the soldier's arm past its natural extension, and the Vreth stumbled forward into a rock face. He was not faster than them. He was not stronger. He simply knew where everything was and where everything would be half a second from now. The fight lasted less than 3 minutes. The Vreth pulled back, dragging their wounded into the shuttle. The cloaked ship vanished over the ridge. Danny stood in the aftermath, breathing hard. The squad stared at him. Then he felt something new. Deep below his feet, far beneath the rock, a pulse. Then another. Then hundreds. The hollow colony was alive. It was massive, and the Vreth were coming back for it with a fleet. The ground beneath Sethera hummed like a living thing holding its breath. Nalith confirmed it within the hour. Deep geological scans revealed a vast network of tunnels and chambers beneath the planet's surface, stretching for kilometers in every direction. And inside those chambers, hundreds of hollow organisms pulsed with faint bioluminescent life. The last surviving colony of a species that the rest of the galaxy had classified as a dangerous parasite. If the Vreth harvest this colony, Nalith said, they will have enough organisms to create an army of force-bonded soldiers. Hundreds of berserkers with no will, no restraint, and no way to be reasoned with. The Concord has no defense against that kind of force. Briggs stared at the scan data on her tactical display. They had 9 combat-capable soldiers, limited ammunition, no air support, and no way to call for reinforcements before the Vreth fleet arrived. By Nalith's estimate, they had 6 hours. "We cannot defend this position," Briggs said. "We do not have the numbers." Danny spoke from the back of the group. "I can talk to them." Every head turned. "The colony," Danny said. "The hollow inside me is connected to them. I have been feeling them since we landed. They know I am here. They are waiting." "Waiting for what?" Briggs asked. "To find out if I am safe." Nalith shook his head. "Absolutely not. If you go into that colony, the organisms could overwhelm your bond. They could take you over completely. They will not. You cannot know that. I can feel it." Ren stepped forward. She had been monitoring Danny's biosigns throughout the mission, and she pulled up her data for everyone to see. His readings have been stable since the bonding. More than stable. The hollow inside him is not fighting his system. They are cooperating. I have watched this bond for weeks, and I have never seen anything like it in any species. If Danny says the colony will not overwhelm him, I believe him. Briggs looked at Danny for a long time. Then she said, "If you're not back in 1 hour, I am pulling the squad out and leaving this planet." "Understood." "Understood." Danny descended alone. The tunnel entrance was a jagged crack in the base of one of the massive skeletal structures. Inside, the air was warm and damp, nothing like the dry, dead surface above. As Danny moved deeper, the walls began to glow. Faint blue-white light seeped from the rock itself, the same bioluminescence he had seen in the cave on Geralt 7, but 1,000 times brighter. The hollow inside his chest was vibrating, not with fear, with recognition. The main chamber opened before him like the inside of a cathedral. It was enormous, easily 100 meters across, with walls covered in crystalline formations that pulsed with soft light. And clinging to every surface, nestled in every crack and hollow, were the organisms, hundreds of them, small, translucent, glowing. They looked like teardrops of living light. As Danny entered the chamber, they stirred. Dozens detached from the walls and drifted toward him, floating on currents of warm air. Danny felt their fear. It washed over him in waves, so strong it nearly buckled his knees. Centuries of hiding. Centuries of watching their world die around them. Centuries of being alone, bonding with nothing, starving slowly in the dark. And underneath the fear, something else. Hope. Fragile, almost invisible, but there. Because Danny carried one of their own inside him, and that one was alive and safe and bonded willingly for the first time and longer than any of them could remember. Danny did not try to speak. He did not try to project thoughts or commands. He sat down on the chamber floor, cross-legged, and let them feel him. He let them feel his years of being the weakest. The mornings he woke up knowing he would fail and got up anyway. The laughter he absorbed. The loneliness he carried. The stubborn, stupid, relentless refusal to stop showing up. The hollow translated his emotions into something the colony understood. Not words, not images, just the raw, unfiltered feeling of a creature that had been broken and small its entire life and had never once stopped trying. The colony responded. The organisms drifted closer. They settled on his shoulders, his arms, his lap. They did not bond with him physically. They bonded with him psychically, connecting to the hollow already inside him and through it to Danny himself. An anchor, a point of trust. By the time Danny stood up, the entire colony was linked to him. He climbed back to the surface. Briggs saw him emerge from the tunnel entrance and started walking toward him. Then she stopped. Behind Danny, the ground split open. Not violently, but gently, like a flower unfolding. Hundreds of hollow organisms rose from the earth, glowing softly against the dark sky of Sethera. They moved in perfect coordination, spreading across the landscape like a living net of light. "What did you do?" Briggs whispered. "I asked for help," Danny said. The Vreth fleet arrived 20 minutes later. Dozens of drop ships descended through the atmosphere in tight formation. They expected a handful of humans and an undefended colony. They got something else entirely. The hollow swarm interfaced with the squad's equipment. Helmet displays lit up with real-time enemy positions. Armor seals tightened and reinforced themselves as organisms bonded with the composite plating. Weapon targeting systems became impossibly precise as the swarm fed sensor data directly into every soldier's HUD.9 soldiers fought like 90. The Hollow predicted enemy movements before they happened. Dropships that tried to land found their navigation systems scrambled by electromagnetic pulses from a swarm. Vreth soldiers on the ground found themselves blind, their thermal and motion sensors overwhelmed by hundreds of moving energy signatures. Danny stood at the center of it all, not fighting, conducting. The weakest soldier in the Terran Expeditionary Corps had become the anchor point of an entire species, and through him, that species was fighting for its survival for the first time in centuries. The Vreth fleet pulled back after losing a third of their dropships. They retreated beyond the atmosphere and held position, regrouping. Danny collapsed the moment the last ship cleared the sky. He hit the ground hard, and the glow in his eyes went dark. Ren sprinted to him and pressed her scanner to his chest. His heartbeat was fading. The strain of anchoring the entire colony was tearing his body apart. "He is dying," Ren said. Danny Harlow had been dying his whole life. Slowly, quietly, in ways that nobody noticed, dying in the rankings. Dying in the eyes of his squad mates. Dying a little each morning when the alarm went off. And he knew the day would end the same way it always did, with him finishing last and pretending it did not hurt. But this was different. This was his actual heart slowing down, his lungs forgetting to pull in air, his blood cooling in his veins while Ren crouched over him with her scanner screaming red warnings. The hollow inside his chest was panicking. Danny could feel it thrashing, pulling energy from the psychic link to the colony, try to keep his organs running through sheer force. But the colony link was the problem. Anchoring hundreds of organisms through one human nervous system had burned through Danny's body like electricity through a wire too thin to carry the current. Ren injected stimulants. His heart rate ticked up, then dropped again. She injected more. Same result. "His nervous system is overloaded," she told Briggs. "The bond is drawing more energy than his body can produce. If we do not break the connection to the colony, he will be dead in minutes. If we break the connection," Nalith said, "the colony loses its anchor. They scatter. They become vulnerable. The Vreth will return and harvest every single one of them." Briggs looked at the Dravine officer. "I am not sacrificing my soldier to save an alien colony." "Then you sacrifice the colony to save one weak human." "Yes, that is not a rational decision. I did not ask for your opinion on my decisions." Danny's eyes opened, just barely. His breathing was shallow, and his skin had gone gray, but he was conscious. He looked up at Ren and tried to speak. His voice came out as a whisper. "Do not break it. Danny, your body cannot sustain this." "I know." He swallowed hard. "But I understand now. Why it chose me." Ren leaned closer. "Why?" "Because I was weak. Not despite it. Because of it." He took a shaking breath. Every other host it tried was strong. Fighters. Their bodies attacked the Hollow the second it entered, and the Hollow had to overpower them to survive. The bond was built on violence. It always collapsed. He closed his eyes. "I never fought anything in my life. I never had the strength to. So when it came in, I just let it settle. No war. No resistance. Just room." His hand found Ren's feathered wrist. "The colony felt that. That is why they trusted me. Not because I was powerful. Because I was open." Ren's eyes were wet. She did not wipe them. Beneath the surface of Sethera, the hollow colony felt their anchor dying. Hundreds of organisms, linked through one fragile human, sensed his heartbeat fading. And They made a choice that IT happened all at once. The psychic link did not break. It shifted. Instead of one organism inside, one human carrying the full weight of the bond, the colony redistributed. Each of the hundreds of hollow organisms took a fraction of the anchor load. The massive, crushing current that had been pouring through Danny's nervous system split into hundreds of tiny streams, each one small enough to be harmless. Danny gasped. His back arched off the ground. Rin grabbed him and held him steady. His heartbeat climbed, slowly at first, then stronger. His skin flushed with color. His breathing deepened. The scanner in Rin's hand shifted from red to amber to green. The load is distributed, Nalith said, staring at his instruments with every facet of his eyes wide. The colony is sharing the burden. Each organism carries a fraction of the psychic weight. His system is stabilizing. Danny lay on the ground, staring up at the bruised sky of Sethera, and breathed. He recovered over the following weeks. The Vreth fleet retreated when Concord reinforcements finally arrived, 3 heavy cruisers and a diplomatic frigate that established a protective perimeter around the planet. Danny was changed, but gently. The hollow inside him remained bonded, still connected to the colony through the distributed link. He could still feel heartbeats, still sense vibrations, still read the invisible language of living bodies. But the connection was sustainable now. Quiet, like a radio tuned to a low frequency, always there, but never overwhelming. The Galactic Concord sent a formal delegation to Sethera. For the first time in the history of the Concord, the Hollow were recognized not as a parasitic threat, but as a sentient species capable of willing symbiotic partnership. The dead world was placed under protection. Danny was appointed as the first official liaison between humanity and the Hollow species. Not because he was the strongest or the smartest or the most qualified, because he was the only one they trusted. Preet found Danny the morning before the delegation ceremony. Danny was sitting on a rock outside the camp, watching the hollow organisms drift lazily through the air like glowing seeds. Preet sat down beside him. He did not say anything for a long time. Then he said, "I'm glad you never listened to any of us." Danny nodded. "Thank you, Preet. I still think you are a terrible runner." "I am." They sat in silence after that, and it was comfortable. Sergeant Briggs submitted her final report to Concord Command that evening. It read, "Soldier Danny Harlow remains the weakest soldier I have ever commanded. He is also the most important. Recommend permanent assignment as humanity's liaison to the Hollow species. He is the only one they trust, and he earned that trust the only way he knows how, by showing up." Rin found Danny late that night, standing at the edge of the camp, the colony lights glowing softly across the landscape behind him. "What does it feel like?" she asked. "Being connected to an entire species?" Danny was quiet for a moment. The organisms drifted around him, warm and weightless. The one inside his chest hummed softly, content. "It feels like finally belonging somewhere," he said. And for the first time in his life, Danny Harlow did not feel like the last one in line.